All right. So thank you very much, Tennis Elbow, for being here today. I know we are all struggling with not having access to the same resources that we usually do. So I appreciate your time and effort figuring out Zoom with me for a special edition of the Local Beat, as I have yet to do a quarantine session yet. So I'm pretty excited about that. And no, I don't expect you guys to play music.
Thank God.
It's been a while since I've had the full band talking with me. So if y'all could introduce yourselves, that would be fantastic. Almost said phenomenal there.
Good catch.
Good catch.
My name is Ryan. I am the band leader, and the tennis player number one.
My name's Chandler, and I play bass, and I'm tennis player number 2, but we tennis only because.
I'm Heather. I play drums live. Yeah.
Does that mean that you don't record the drum parts?
Last album I recorded. This time it's all Ryan for the drum.
Well, we'll talk a lot about the recording process in a little bit, as when Ryan talked about Do You Belong Here, we focused a lot on the recording style. So we'll definitely have to bring it back and do some pros and cons and contrasting. But like I said, we haven't spoken since July of 2019. What has the band been doing since then?
What have we done since then? Well, we kind of went on hiatus as of August. So Tennis Elbow didn't really exist for a little bit, just because Heather and I moved to Brooklyn.
I was going to say for what reason, but I guess for what reason did you move to Brooklyn?
To follow our dreams.
Follow our dreams. And how's that going, I guess?
It was
bad. It's going very bad. It actually couldn't be going any worse, if I'm being honest.
We talked a little bit over the phone when setting up this interview, and I said that I was interested in discussing what like the New York music environment is as compared to like North Carolina, and specifically Wilmington, which is your place of origin for those who are unaware. Can you elaborate on that? Because when I originally brought it up, you said I could go on forever, so give it a shot.
Well, I was really hoping that Heather would say yes, because that is a Heather question. She's in Brooklyn bands, and she has performed, and she is in the know, and I think she could probably do a really succinct comparison.
Popcorn it to Heather then.
Thank you, Ryan. It's quite different. I think in terms of sound, which is a given, but also just like, I don't know, I think they're more, there's a certain intensity with it. It's more intense. It's more like these are people's livings. Like they're just musicians. That's all they do pretty much. They produce on the side and they play shows. Mm-hmm. Whereas like in Wilmington, you'll have like, I work at Cookout, but I'm also in a band. So it's kind of like people go to Brooklyn to have a career in music, and that's what they do. So that's all they do. So it's really cool. I like it.
When you say intense, could the word competitive also be used? Is that an apt description?
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to get to be on bills. It's hard to play shows. It's hard to maybe join a band, and sort of, since there's so many people and so many bands, it's hard to make yourself seen. It's hard to, be different. But yeah, it can be competitive for sure.
Since you said that you like it, oftentimes when people talk about New York, you hear the story of people moving there and following their dreams, as Ryan said, and then kind of getting like the New York burnout and saying like, this is too much for me. Even though it's intense and competitive, like, why do you like it so much?
So I play synthesizer in a Brooklyn band called Assassin of Youth, and all the other band members are like Berkeley, like College of Music graduates, and I have no formal training. I never took any lessons, so I'm completely out of my element. But being around all those extremely talented, smart people in terms of music is just like, it's mind-blowing. It's addictive.
I guess this would be a pretty good transition considering the addictive nature. Any of you could answer this question. How are you continuing to do music in quarantine?
Well, I made an album.
Which is why we're here today.
Yeah, I kind of have like a manic energy. I think the band
Which
will,
is evident on the album.
Thank you. I will take that as a compliment. No, that the band I think totally gets my manic energy, which is kind of why I like them so much, because I'll go, hey, I have a 30-song rock opera I want to make, and they'll go, okay. It does kind of feel like, no matter what I kind of say, they'll be like, I'm down. Yeah, let's try it. Who cares?
But would you say writing this album is what kind of just like ended the Tennis Elbow hiatus? You just decided that you wanted to keep working on it, essentially?
Well, yeah. I mean, Heather and I have been talking about the new Tennis Elbow album for months and months, because I'll go into her room, because we live across literally 4 feet from each other, and I'll go, hey Heather, I wrote a new song, and she'll go, cool, buddy, and then I'll go to bed. So yeah, I mean, like I've definitely been writing these songs for a while, but the whole album was recorded under quarantine, which was a surreal experience for us from the get-go. It's such a weird atmosphere, but I think we made the best of it. I hope so, at least.
I have a lot of compliments for the album, so I'm very excited to discuss with y'all the making of it. I actually didn't know that it was made exclusively during quarantine. That's kind of a fast turnaround time. How long have you been writing the songs?
Well, this is the longest turnaround time for any Tennis Elbow album by a lot. Usually we record everything in like 2 weeks, and then the album is done like a week later. But this time I felt like I guess maybe I just had more to say than I did last time. And maybe I wanted to explore sonically more than I did last time. So it took way longer.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that this album is really exciting. I think a rock opera is a good description of it. I really enjoyed sitting and listening to it straight through at least once. And there were moments where I was captivated because it was lush and deep in its sound, but also exciting, and there were different dance parts, and I audibly laughed at some of the transitions, at how quickly they changed. But I really enjoyed listening to it, and I'm really excited to explore this album. What was it like recording bass parts in different cities?
Yeah, it was interesting. Ryan called me, oh geez, I don't even know, like a month ago maybe? Was it like, I don't know, maybe like a month ago. And he was like, hey man, like how's it going? Like I have these songs. I wanted to like, ask you if you wanted to do bass for it, because, obviously I'm not doing anything. I'm just locked in my room and, listening to records and playing video games. So, yeah, and I was like, yeah, it'd be great. It's awesome. Cause I haven't, obviously done anything with either of those guys in a while. So, he sent me the files over, and it was actually pretty quick. Just, hearing the songs and like writing the parts. And I remember, actually sitting like right here, I would like use my like, iPhone video recorder and be like, hey man, like I think this is kind of cool. What do you think? And then you'd be like, oh, it's great. And, after like a couple days, kind of get the parts down and send them back to him, and, take notes if I needed to, and anything I needed to change.
Did Ryan provide any like scratch bass tracks that for you to go off of, like a general concept, or was it entirely your writing?
Not really. But the reason why I chuckled a little bit is because there was, I forget which song we were working on, but he sent me a voice memo of like what he's like, hey man, can you do something like this? And it was just like yeah, but like something I get it. It's probably the same like reaction I feel like someone who plays drums is like thinking about when I'm like, hey, can you do something that's like that? And and they're just like, what? But so yes, and there was like a general like feel, because I'm always very like over analytical, I guess, about a lot of stuff, and I don't want to be playing too much, or am I playing too little? So I sort of would ask him as sort of a guiding force, if you will.
A puppet master.
Yes.
Wait,
He's holding the Wiimote.
You have it?
Check this out. This is something that he sent me. If we can see it, let's see if I can.
Oh, shit, that's right. Oh, yeah. So okay, I don't want to get too into it, but he sent me one of the songs, and for the life of me, this is terrible for promotion. I can't think of it. Ryan knows, I'm sure. Right?
Oh yeah, no, it changed names 3 times. It's called Anytime now.
Okay, so it was that one. So I'm a good band member. And I was listening to it, and up to this point, I'd like, heard the song. I got the feel for it. And there's this part in the middle where it kind of does this really weird like breakdown. The drums are all over the place. And at first I was like, man, am I just not that good? Like, am I not picking up on like the time signature? And I sat here for probably an hour. I'm like listening to it. I'm like, okay, that's in 6/8. And I'm like, okay, now it just switches completely to like 5/4. And so I ended up writing it down. I think I still have the paper here somewhere. Yeah, it's here. This is the paper that I used to write down the changes in time signatures, and it's probably not going to pick up on the camera, but it goes from like 6/8 to 5/4. There's some chords here too. And I was like, yeah, man, this is the time signature. I was like, I texted Ryan. I was like, yeah, like, what did you do for that? Like, what was the thing? He's like, oh, dude, I have no idea. I just kind of did what I did. Oh, great, cool. I'm a crazy person.
I love math rock. Truly, I do.
Yeah. Which I thought was hilarious, I think it turned out great. I thought it was really cool that it sort of floats and changes and shifts.
Which is a good way to describe the album too. It has a lot of floating and changing and shifting, and I also think that's kind of a central theme about the album. Like there's a lot of historical references, and I when listening to it could kind of draw some compare and contrast between the depth of writing that Ryan applied for Do You Belong Here to this new album, which we haven't even said the title yet. Go ahead and say it, Ryan. It's your cue.
It's called Dropping a Han Dynasty Urn.
Dropping a Han Dynasty Urn. But there's a lot of change, particularly when you're advocating for change in Overton window swing, when you're talking about changing in relationship dynamics. So tell me more about that historical theme. Like, what was your thought process going into that?
The thing that inspired the album was Ai Weiwei's 1995 series of paintings. He has 3 paintings in a row where it shows him holding a Han Dynasty urn. And then the second one's him letting it go. And then the third one is the Han Dynasty urn shattering on the ground. And the Han Dynasty urn probably was worth around $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
And Ai Weiwei has a lot of other really amazing pieces where he's like taking ancient urns and drawing Coca-Cola symbols on them. He said that the only way to build a new world is by destroying the old one. And so that was huge. That was huge for me. And so I said, yeah, hell yeah. I love that. That's a really good philosophy, especially now more than ever when things are kind of going.
I did have to look up a lot of different things when listening to this album, particularly.
My mom hates that, by the way.
Does she really?
Yeah, she goes, I hate the names, and I think that you should make them things that people know because you seem like a jerk, and I wouldn't want to be your friend. And I was like, fair. That's very fair. Thank you, Mom.
My next comment could either support your mom or undermine your mom. Last album cycle, we talked about your compare and contrast with Jack White, and then we also called him a pretentious prick for like 15 minutes. And
yeah, he is, but he's great.
These song titles are very Jack White.
Yeah, for sure. I called the songs like their names for like real reasons, but looking at the track list, you go, oh, this sucks. I hate this. How do I pronounce like a third of this?
So Do You Belong Here was your Lazaretto. This is your boarding house ranch. It has the same, obviously Jack White is untouchable, so don't get a big head here, but the progression from each album I think is really comparable, and I can see some inspiration there, which I thought was cool comparing it to our last conversation about the album. Did you find it difficult to communicate these extravagant ideas to your band members?
Yeah, especially to Heather, because from the get-go, you know, I knew that if I wanted to make a tennis elbow album in the next 3 or 4 months, that it would be very, very difficult to, you know, because our style of recording is we don't use BPM. We don't do anything that like would help us in a scenario where we're far apart. We always kind of record things together in one space. So, you know, there was just no way for me to convey what I thought the song should be. So I went and I recorded drums ahead of time, which was both a betrayal, but also kind of cool for Heather in the sense that she got to have a weirder touch on this album that she doesn't usually have in a solo project. More akin to her Pinky Verde work in the sense that, like, you know, it wasn't afraid to get a little wonky. And, you know, I think that's why I like her solo stuff so much, and why I wanted her to be in the band in the first place, was because she's a talented producer, a talented songwriter, and also not afraid to be weird as hell. And I respect that so hard.
Heather, do you have any commentary on those descriptors?
I remember Ryan first telling me about his like idea for the whole Han Dynasty thing. I love it. It's very fascinating. I love history and culture and stuff. He said he wanted it to have sort of a Pinky Verde influence, I guess, and I can totally see that on like the 5-minute song. What's that song called?
Oh gosh, I should have written down the song name.
It's called Roger Moorcock.
Yes, I actually have a reference to that song in just a second.
That song definitely reminds me of like Pinky Verde, because it goes on all these weird tangents and it's not structured really, and so I dig it. The wonkiness.
The instrumentation on this album is kind of crazy. I mentioned earlier that there were transitions that made me like audibly laugh, and one of them was in Roger Moorcock. I actually wrote down this little note that I'm going to read directly off the page. I said, stylistic maturity, really complex album. Instrumentation gets kind of crazy. In specifics, flute on Dinosaur and intro, and Roger Moorcock, the insane guitar solo on the second song, and then the space transition in the middle of Roger Moorcock, which kind of gave me some Space Oddity, David Bowie vibes, and then it just kind of like exploded back into like funk music, and I laughed at that. I had to. It was such a wild change. And so when you mentioned earlier that this album came out of like manic energy, I was like, yeah, it definitely did. But can you tell me more about who did the additional instruments, like the flute on this album, the extra vocals, the spoken word? There's so many little bits and pieces in the making of this.
I got my friend Rhiannon, who has played saxophone on every
Rhiannon Dewey, project. A classic.
She is on a lot of it, but my friend Joe, also Joe is his artist name. He is very talented. He does the chorus on the song Eurydice. He sings in Roger Moorcock, part of the people screaming. And his girlfriend, the lovely Paige, she does the flute on Dinosaur, and she does flute and saxophone on Roger Moorcock. And she's very talented. And she sings on Nero Diocletian. She does the backing vocals,
harmony part. Yep.
And then she does the chorus on Anytime Now. We'll still be happy anyway. She sings that. And then she also does the screaming in Roger Moorcock. So she is all over this thing. And then I asked my comedy friend, Julia Desmond, who I have always thought was the coolest person in the world. And I asked her out of nowhere, kind of out of like literally, I text her, can you send me a rant? I don't care what it's about, but just make it political. And she was like, yeah, I'll do that right now.
Yeah, I got it.
Immediately, right? And so like, I didn't feed her anything. I did not feed her any lines. I was just like, send me whatever you honestly think, and then I will put it on top of the song. And she was super down, and it fits stupidly well. I'm so proud of it.
Like I said, my thoughts go on regarding references I could make of like sonic similarities and changes between this album and your previous work. which, by the way, I'm very excited to have explored. All three of your albums at this point, and the development of the three of you as musicians has been really fun to watch and explore. Speaking of Eurydice, which you brought up when describing the additional instrumentation, it's a phenomenally lush song. I think it was perhaps my favorite song on the album. It's another historical reference that I went and Googled and was interested in the results. But it was almost like a power pop ballad, sort of, which is, I think, a genre or trend that's really coming back right now. Do you have any specific inspiration when writing that song, or what are your thoughts behind that one specifically?
Yeah, no, I wrote that song in 2017 for a band called Outline Skates. And I made a demo of it, and I never did the vocals for it. I never recorded the vocals. But I was inspired because Jens Lekman has a really great debut record. I forget the name of it, but it's really great. But Jens Lekman has a wonderful record, and kind of go off a little bit less about Eurydice and more about the song Palisade Past You. I think you mentioned the guitar solo specifically at the end of that song.
I did, yeah.
And the guitar solo was done by none other than Chandler Fix on the guitar.
What is this? Plot twist. Don't know. Yeah, that was fun. Ryan sent me a text and he said, "Make it like Prince," and I said, "I can't do that."
Make it like Prince.
Yeah, it was cool. I've played guitar longer than I played bass, probably 15, 16 years, and it was kind of cool. I don't ever get to play guitar in any project, so it was kind of fun to, bust that out and get some shredding going.
And he delivered. He delivered so hard.
Yeah. Do all three of you have a heavy interest in 80s music? Just straight question like that.
Yeah.
No.
No?
No.
Heather doesn't know any music. That's a famous fact about Heather.
What kind of 80s music?
I think it varies. When we talked about Do You Belong Here, we discussed specifically Olivia Newton-John's Physical, regarding this album being, it's, like I called it earlier, power pop. That's a genre that's coming back. You see it on Hayley Williams' new album, and then Dua Lipa recently also ripped off Physical from our last discussion. And I think that the new wave stylings are really in right now. And I wanted to know whether or not that was intentional, or if you just really like a variety of 80s. You mentioned Prince, and he made music in the 80s, and I quoted David Bowie earlier, and he made music in the 80s. And
yeah, I mean, obviously there are a lot of artists in the 80s that
there's a lot of music from the 80s.
There's a lot of music in the 80s. Period. End of sentence. I grew up on a lot of like Suicidal Tendencies and Merciful Fate and Misfits and stuff like that. So like my understanding of the 80s is mainly heavy metal. But it wasn't until like 5 years ago or so that I really dived into Prince's discography. And obviously David Bowie has a wonderful Let's Dance is a great record from start to finish. An excellent record. And obviously Chandler could talk your head off about Black Flag and all the Washington DC punksters, right?
Oh yeah, that's all that stuff. I mean, that's why I asked like what 80s. I mean, obviously there's not like a hardcore breakdown on this record or anything, but yeah, there's all kinds of 80s stuff. Yeah, I grew up on all like the metal and the punk and all that like heavy stuff, but then like new wave and like synth pop and stuff is amazing, and like a lot of like like Bowie obviously and Prince for sure. Like
it's not terribly far off to quote 80s punk though. Maybe it's not super evident when listening to the album specifically, but 80s punk is very, like when you think of like hardcore as a genre, it's very reliant on a groove. You mentioned a breakdown, and like the bass guitar and that backing like lean into the music kind of feel was really developed in the 80s, whether it's disco or whether it's like hardcore. It's a common characteristic, and this album dropping a Han Urn, a Han Dynasty Urn, I apologize, is really reliant on you, Chandler.
I like view the same breakdown in like a Slayer song with the same intensity as I view like a breakdown in like a Joni Mitchell song.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels the same to me, which is probably, you know, weird for some people, but it's that like sort of that rhythm of it all that I, you know, really enjoy bringing, because if it's not there, then it's like, what is there?
I told Chandler on the phone, and I really meant it, and I still mean it. I told him that Tennis Elbow is Chandler Hicks. Chandler Hicks is the backbone of Tennis Elbow's groove. You know what I mean? Like he really does bring it all together.
I have a note here. It's specifically under Overton Window Swing and Eurydice, but it says really emotive music, introspective, heavy, and lush, contrasted with speedballing funk and Chandler being a wizard. And I wrote this down.
I was gonna wear my cloak, but I thought it would be too much.
It's a little too flashy. You'd make me feel bad.
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't want to, you know, overstep my, you know.
Look, I changed out of pajamas for this interview. Be grateful.
You know, I misspoke when I said that I did all the drums for the record, because Heather does play drums on Eurydice.
Heather is also a wizard, so.
Yeah, no, I think what was important for me about this album was that Tennis Elbow is I mean, for me it's a 90s ironic Ben Folds cover band. But it was important for me to
always cited Ben Folds.
It's always been like, I don't want Tennis Elbow to have a sound, but I want you to hear a Tennis Elbow song and go, that's Tennis Elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to be necessarily one genre.
And like I said earlier, I've really enjoyed seeing these different influences come together across 3 albums. Kind of a grab bag question, but do any of y'all have a specifically favorite moment on the album? It's Heather time. I think it's Heather time.
It's got to be Heather time. Heather's heard the whole album.
My favorite moment, I really like the end of Overton Window Swing. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
I like at the very end. I don't know if you changed this, but when Julia says, "Fuck."
No, it's still there.
It's still there.
I love that. That sticks out to me for some reason.
That was one of the transitions that made me laugh. It was just very on the nose.
Hilarious. I love it.
Yeah, it's so funny. And I cut her off right before she finishes the words, but I was like, she is so funny and delivered that so great that I was like, I can't not make that the end of the song. Like, that's so perfect, right?
Oh, look, it's Chandler time as well.
I was thinking very very hard on what part was my favorite, and like halfway through, whoever was just talking, because I was thinking so hard I couldn't even remember who was talking. I remembered there's a saxophone part that Rhiannon does on now I'm blanking on the song.
How's it go?
The one
Overall?
Yes. Oh my god. Okay, so the third, like the last verse, like right before the chord changes, there's this part where she's like, like the saxophone, and it kind of lifts up the back half of the song. That's just so good. Like that's just so good. Like,
he does
literally,
I
listen to that song just to hear that saxophone part. Like I could take
me too.
out of the song.
Me too.
Like that shit is so good. She's such a good like performer. Like, oh my god.
She sent me the sweetest text shortly after sending me all the files. That was along the lines of like, I haven't touched my saxophone all of quarantine, and I haven't been like artistically inspired in so long. But you giving me these crazy weird tracks and telling me to write whatever I want on top of them has been a blast. And so it's one of the rare times where you ask someone to do something and then they go, thank you. And you go, no, you, thank you. Oh my God, thank you. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. There's like so many good moments of like her just, you know, going to town.
my favorite track is Dinosaur on the album.
The very first track.
The very first track, that's my favorite song because Heather and I developed that song kind of together. Because that song was initially on a EP we made called Elite by Cyberspace Heartbreak, which doesn't exist anymore right now, but will eventually when I re-upload it to Spotify. I was told by Julia, who was on the album and had a girlfriend, aforementioned. She told me out of nowhere that was her favorite song that I've ever written, and I was so oh, that's the song. Okay, I guess I'll put that on a Passepled album then. So that's the only reason it's on the album. Because I sent the album to Chandler. Chandler did his bit. I sent it to Paige and she did her flute. And then I sent it to Heather at the very end, and Heather made the track. Heather literally made that track, and it's my favorite part of the album to listen to, honestly. So damn good.
I love the excitement you all have for each other as musicians. It's a really like tangibly warm friendship and like intercollaboratory relationship. It's really cute. I really like it. What was the most difficult part about making this album?
I was gonna say the most difficult part for me was not being able to actually be with the both of you guys like jamming on it, because that's like one of my favorite like parts of like playing with anybody really, but specifically with y'all. It's just like, because the music is so intricate and very explosive at times with chords and melody and stuff. It's really fun to kind of get in person. Obviously with this quarantine, pretty hard to do that, but I thought that was probably the most, not difficult, but it was it's like, oh man, I don't get
frustrating. Yeah.
I think in the beginning of the album cycle, I said, Heather brings an energy on her drumming that I do not possess in my drumming. So I felt like that was an immediate loss for the record, that Heather wasn't, laying down the entire backbeat. I felt like that was to the detriment of the album. Heather has always said that I am a weird drummer. And this album is no exception. This is actually probably the weirdest drumming I've done ever.
I agree with that statement. It's good. It's really good.
It is really good.
But very weird.
It's very weird. I drum
like a robot. Like a robot. You know what I mean? Like
like how Stevie Wonder hears the song in his head, and he'll go, I'm just gonna make a beat for it, and I know exactly how to do it. For me, I can, like, when I do the song in my head, I change the drum beat for the verse because I know, like, in my head, I'm like, oh, it changes here when I do the piano, so I'll change it here. And it barely goes together, ever.
It's funny you say that, because, like, I remember, like, listening to some of the tracks, and, sometimes there will be hits, in certain rhythmic patterns that you definitely want to like emphasize with the bass, but normally for like verses they're usually like the same kind of like hits. And I remember like recording it for a number of songs, and it's like, okay, this is that, and then I kind of want to syncopate with it, but then there's like it switches it up so many times, which is like interesting because it makes me go, but then it's like I'll think it's gonna hit it, and then it like it hits it like on the and one or something, it kind of goes which I thought was cool because it kind of switches up the the rhythmic feel of it, but it was also just like, oh, okay, it kind of makes me, that's another thing like why I like playing with with Tennis Elbow and like playing a lot of Ryan's.
Chandler, I miss you.
I miss you too, Heather. I want to like hang out, but like all this junk, all these diseases.
Wait, but there's what?
Yeah, like one of the reasons why like I enjoy it is because it kind of makes me sort of play outside of this field that I kind of normally find myself in as like a bass player. I'm in a couple other projects, and I'm not gonna say it's simple. Obviously, like I want to bring a sort of complexity to whatever I'm doing, but I'm not gonna play like a 6/8 like waltz or something with, you know, several different chord changes and, you know, things, which is like, I love listening to all that kind of music, you know, with all these, you know, like Ryan mentioned Stevie Wonder and like having all these like different parts and chords. Like I love a good chord progression. And I think playing with, you know, these guys is helpful in that it kind of gets that, you know, gets that part of me to like be expressed and be like, oh, I can just lay down some, you know, like a cool doodad.
A cool doodad.
He does, if anything, he does too many things.
I do too many things.
So many
But that's
things.
the thing. Like you were saying with the like the manic energy that like you have and that like is obviously noticed. I'm the same way. Like I have to be like almost to a fault, you know, doing something like either making like programming drums or like noodling on like a guitar or, you know, consuming something. So I think it's good, you know, you can kind of hear it on the record too, but I think it's good that like both of those energies are kind of together. Does that make sense? I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've actually been thinking through much of this interview that it's clear that the three of you have worked together for a very long time. The same goes for like working with Rhiannon Dewey. There's just so much of this album that like could not have happened had you not had all this experience together. But at the same time, there's a lot of it that seems to have just like fallen into place. You both being like manic at the same time, Ryan just like having a concept, executing it, and have willing partners who are like open to working on it. It just, I'm gonna say it, phenomenal. I'm gonna say it. Now, we've talked about this album a lot, but we haven't noted the release date. When does everyone else get to hear it?
Okay, the first, it drops in 3 parts, just like the Ai Weiwei piece. It drops, the first one is called The Drop, and that comes out May 21st. And then The Fall, which is the second EP, comes out June 4th. And then the final album, dropping a Han Dynasty Urn with all the tracks at once. I think it's a 10-track album altogether. Comes out like June 18th, I think is the date. Yeah.
The day before my birthday, June.
Yeah, on
2
purpose.
days before my little sister's birthday.
This is all on purpose. I did this all on purpose.
All on purpose. Very, very stoked for this album to be shared with the world. Like I said, I cannot say enough good things. I was really engaged with the whole thing and am captivated by the complexity that you were able to shove into a 10-song package in like less than 2 months. Crazy. Love the cow, Heather.
That is
Having
a good cow. Tennis Elbow had a rule before this that we would never do synth. And then I was like, I want to do that now. So I broke my only rule. And then I even sampled, I sampled Heather's drums and I sampled Fix Me on the first track, Dinosaur.
Love that. I love that.
Thank you.
I heard that and I was like, oh, snap. Like a throwback. Sorry.
Throwback. But yeah. I mean, like this album was mainly just about breaking my own rules and trying to be uncomfortable.
Breaking your own urn.
Tennis Elbow is going to release the album in about a month, a little bit over a month. But until then, I guess I'm just going to sell my soul to music marketing, which is a soulless hellscape, by the way. Music marketing.
We learned about that on the song Streaming on Do You Belong Here?
Oh my God, it's horrible. Oh, I didn't miss it. If anything, that's why I didn't want to make another Tennis Elbow album so soon, was because I remembered how horrible creating content to market it was.
It's like, that music industry burnout. We talked about it.
Oh, I hate it. Yeah, no, it's awful. I think every band is kind of in that dilemma where they're like, we want to keep making stuff, we want to keep performing, and it's becoming very clear that is not going to be the same as it used to be for a while. So right. So it's creating art at all right now. If you're a musician, you can make the art in your living room, in your basement, right? But in regards to like marketing the art, in regards to reaching people, in regards to performing, your hands are tied. It's awful. I mean, like I want nothing more than to be with these boys out performing and playing these new songs, and and making that happen. And I know that Team Player feels the same way, and Subtle Fuzz, and all of them feel the same way.
Oh, yeah.
So
Sure.
and I think that is a shared sentiment for all the artists right now.
And so on that note, I really appreciate all three of you talking with me today, particularly considering that it is my first Local Beat digital session. I think it went phenomenally well, and I've really enjoyed, as I've said repeatedly, getting to explore dropping a Han Dynasty Urn. Really, really exciting album, really, really wonderful. So thank you very much for being here today. Any final questions, comments, or concerns?
It's funny that we're talking about like not being able to perform and the whole music scene and stuff, because weirdly enough, there's a project that's been put out by quite a few local to Wilmington artists that we all kind of collectively did over the past month or so. The quarantine sessions that we, I know Tennis Elbow's on it, Two Tree Hill's on it, Pinky Verde's on it.
Pinky Verde.
Team Player's on it for sure, and a bunch of other like local bands. So if anybody wants to hear some cool music, it's definitely on Bandcamp. And I know there's been some hiccups getting it on streaming services, but all of the proceeds go to Nourish NC, which I believe
Correct.
is a local food bank in town.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's supporting a good cause. It was started up by Marty Cunningham of Team Player. We kind of just got together. So if anybody wants to check out, obviously any Tennis Elbow stuff or Pinky Verde stuff or any other kind of music of that realm, definitely go check that out.
And they're like exclusive tracks too that are not on the album.
Yeah, they're not.
That's the cool thing. But yeah, go to quarantinesessions.bandcamp.com to do that. I think it's $7, and obviously
Nice.
all the money goes to Nourish NC. I think there's like 20 tracks. It's like insane.
Yeah, it's an awesome album.
But yeah, no, the album comes out June 18th. There are 2 EPs that drop before it, and I don't want to be marketing it anymore. So if anyone wants to be my manager, I am all ears, please.
So on that note, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.